Sarah Selecky. Welcome to the ROI Online Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this is fun. So you've written this book called Radiant Shimmering Light. And so you come from the world of creative book writing. You were a recommendation to me of some of the other folks that I've interviewed, and I love having folks from this creative book writing domain. You have uh, you're the creator of the Sarah Selecky Writing School. You have another book called This Cake is for the Party.
Mhm.
I love that title.
Thank you.
But anyway, I was looking at your Radiant Shimmering Light book, and it's about this pet portrait artist that's trying to be a good business person and sell their creative work and try to be legit on social media. And I was just laughing about it, even though that's not the overall story. I was laughing at the setup because that illustrates the total problem that every business owner wrestles with is they have to work into this creative domain of being a virtual representation in some way, and it's got a marketing and this creative and a website, and yet they
Yeah.
just want to do their business, and then vice
Yeah.
versa. You have these creative people that have to wander into it. That's why I'm excited about having you here and talking about it. But tell me a little bit why you chose that setup in the,
Yeah.
I obviously you may have related with her Lillian, right?
Come to find out. Yeah. The book started, the seeds of those characters started long before I related in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they are spin-off. So Lillian, the main character of the novel, Radiant Shimmering Light, is as the main character in one of the short stories in my first book, This Cake is for the Party. And, these books were written in the late 2000s and then took us into where we are now. And in that time, everything has changed. I mean, it was before Facebook, before Instagram. So in the short story, Lillian was selling products. She was part of a multi-level marketing program, and she was trying to sell nutritional products to her friends. And the story was around intimacy, authenticity, and generating an income, and what happens when friendships become transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I started thinking was, what would happen if, when Instagram came up and when Facebook came around, I would just daydream and think, what would Lillian do if she had Instagram? What would Lillian do if she? So I extended from there and really daydreamed at the start of social media, before it became what it is now. Before the algorithm started shifting. Like at the beginning, it was a much simpler time, and the novel really came out of imagining what would happen if someone was trying to sell their artwork using social media. Well, as it turns out, here we are. It's 2020, and everyone needs to use social media if they're going to do anything. So I started the premise with a daydream, and then at the same time, in IRL, I moved my work, which was, I was a creative writing instructor, a private teacher. I moved my work, like many, many, many other people, online. And so I came up against the same things that Lillian was coming up against, which is how do you, legit, as you say, how do you market yourself with authenticity? How do you enter the field of capitalism, really, as an artist who's working in the realm of art? In Lillian's case, watercolor paintings. In my case, it was teaching artists how to create art. And that economy does not align well all the time with the market economy. It's a shared economy. It's a gift economy. Art has to keep moving in order to stay alive. So where the gift economy lines up with the market economy, and how does that rub, and how does that affect relationships, and how does that affect your own relationship with yourself, and how does it really affect your relationship with your art? And can you be purist about it? Do you have to put, you got to put food on the table? How do you do it? So those were the things that came up as I was writing it. And as I began moving my teaching online, I discovered more and more and more about Lillian's world, just through being on the sidelines myself. Yeah.
Totally. And that's what everyone runs into, whether they're from the artsy side or the business side. The artsy side is like, I just want to create art. And am I selling out that I actually get an online store together and then start thinking, and how do I run campaigns to get more people introduced to my art? You know, there's that thing that you wrestle with. How do you help people approach that conversation? I'm curious what's your therapy?
Radiant Shimmering Light, writing Radiant Shimmering Light was my therapy. It's an unresolvable dilemma. So I think it's an unresolvable dilemma. So I don't think that there's a way to solve the problem. I don't. And I maybe wouldn't have said that at the beginning of the writing experience, and my journey through those characters and what they were doing in that story was part of my own journey of figuring out, is this resolvable or not? And I think that, like so many things, truth exists where there's a paradox. Like the beauty of a paradox, I think we find that echoing in anything that feels really real. It's a both and situation. It's a neither nor situation. And I think that it's about accepting the fact that it's not going to feel resolved, and also accepting and understanding that there's a verb to that balancing. It's not an achievable end state. It's responding daily or moment to moment, even in a way that feels appropriate to you, staying in touch with your own values. Even writing them down helps, getting some kind of a value equation, and then understanding that whatever technology you use is going to help bring you closer to your own values. So that changes day to day. That can change seasonally, that can change year to year, it can change depending on what you're creating, who you want to reach out to, the connections that you make through exposing yourself and promoting yourself. And then there's often, with many writers in particular, we're introverts. So the idea of promoting yourself and going out and putting it out, it's just like there's this extra layer that sometimes feels even harder than other times. So I don't have a lot of advice except to pay attention and to know that you're only doing it wrong if and when it feels bad, and then just take a pause.
So you hit on 3 really great thoughts to explore. Okay, so I think it's inherent in Lillian's case, or in an entrepreneur's case, they're wanting that one silver bullet that resolves this art to business application. And the truth is there's no silver bullet, but that's what we're hoping to find. And so we search it, but what we don't realize, actually, there's a process. There's an application of principles. And the other thing you touched on, you have to figure out what you're about and weave that in that process. So and so first you have to get your messaging right. Then here we are in this time and age, there's a technology application, but that technology is going to change.
Oh yeah.
It's changed, but it's universal across time. You're having your messaging right, utilizing the technology of your day, having a way to connect with people in an authentic way that your multi-level conversation that you brought up. So we've all been exposed to it in some way, either as a participant or a victim of that. Okay. And here's the dilemma that the multi-level marketing process presents. Do I look at you as my friend, or do I look at you as a sale?
Yeah.
And if I'm not looking at you as a sale, then am I failing on my commitment to reach
Yeah.
my goals? And that's what I call quotas. The quotas is
Oh, yeah.
everything wrong with what it means that I just want to make my quota, whether it's right for you or not. I need to hit my quota.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
love that you brought that up, because that's universal in many applications. And if we start to look at each other as humans,
Mm-hmm.
and if I really want to help you,
Mm-hmm.
then my quota is subordinate to what's the most valuable thing for you. And if it happens to be what I'm about,
Mm-hmm.
we'll
Mm-hmm.
work that in. But after we determine whether this is even a good
Mm-hmm.
conversation or not.
Yeah. It's so tricky though. Like it sounds very calming when you put it that way. But anyone in that position, I mean, how do you know? Where's your center? Where are you grounded in knowing? How do you know if you're doing it the right way or not? And uh, it's not something that is a template. It's person to person,
There you go.
and it's day to day. And there's a knowledge. It's not even multi-level marketing, but anything where you are offering something to someone else, even if it's like a teaching that has no price attached. There is a resistance. It's like before any creative act, there's going to be a resistance. So part of the role of a good helper is to understand that someone's going to resist, understand that tension, and then, on what I think is the nefarious side, manipulate that. And then on the compassionate side, ease someone into growing. And I don't think, I mean, we've all seen, and if you've just touched on marketing and seen the language, you can see how easily manipulatable that is. And that someone who has been coached to manipulate through that tension, that place of tension, can feel quite right about it, can feel quite righteous about it, that they're doing, like, that they, people want to be sold something. People want to have this chain, like this is for their, and that's really tricky ground.
Let's talk about.
Yeah.
I'd love to. All right. So we're a story brand. We were the first story brand certified agency. I'm a story brand certified guide now. And there's a 7-part framework. It's a template, or it's a system to apply the rules of story into your marketing. And one of the key points that makes it so powerful is to realize that the people you want to help, they're the hero in their story, and you're the helper, you're the guide.
Mm-hmm.
So I love this conversation about the resistance that a guide is going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
Talk some more to us about.
Yeah. I mean, that's okay. I want to caveat this by saying, like, later, can we talk about other methods, other story forms other than the hero's journey? Because everything, this is like, and I don't have answers around this. I'm still just exploring it myself, but we have been inundated. We have, like, the dominant paradigm has told us that the hero's journey is the only story. And that's not true. It's just the one, that we work, it's the paradigm we work within. So, the caveat is we also know that there are things about the paradigm we live in that aren't working. So if the main story form is a part of that, I think that as creatives, it behooves us to interrogate that and dismantle it and break it up and see if there are other ways to looking at story. So that I want to look at that later.
So that's part 2.
And talk about it and see what you think about it. But as far as that resistance in the classic hero's journey, and even the heroine's journey, there comes a call, an initiation, an invitation. And the hero always says no first, because it means changing the status quo of and whether the status quo is happy or unhappy, or, a story of success or despair, it's comfortable, it's what's known. So calling into the unknown is just, it's the initial, you see it everywhere. You see it in books you read, you see it in TV shows. Every episode has a moment where here's the new thing that you can do. And the hero or the collective says, I don't think so. I don't have to do that. And that invitation is always going to be the invitation to the journey, which, again, whether it's a hero's journey of an external or a heroine's journey, which is more internal, it is a place of evolution and transformation. So the journey will bring you to a place of knowing things that you didn't know before, understanding things you didn't understand before, all of that stuff which brings you to another place, which is hopefully a better place, but a growth place.
Right.
So understanding, I can see how in any kind of marketing template or idea of how to go forward that way, if you understand that the person you're working with is going to say no first,
Mm-hmm.
You can work with that. You can work with that, understanding that that's a natural part of the journey of growth.
So being a better helper, and one of the things that we wanted to discuss as well is we talk about the resistance, the enemy of being creative is a resistance that we face, and understanding that people that need to go through a change or realizing they need to embrace some solution to solve whatever it is that's making them uncomfortable, and we're the helper. How do you approach, let's talk more about approaching the resistance and being a better version of a helper.
Yeah, well, it's this, I love how you introduced that, because as you were speaking, I was just reflecting, it's not unlike being a good friend. And it's not over the short term, it's long term. So it's you build a relationship with someone, and then you get to understand them, and you can actually empathize better with them the longer you know them. You can't assume things about the other person beyond basic assumptions that everyone wants to feel, happy and be out of suffering and the rest of it. But I mean, what someone needs at this stage in their life, you can't assume. But if you have a relationship with a person and you build trust with a person, when they are spinning their wheels, you can sometimes just say, like, here's some traction. For someone like you you appear to be spinning your wheels. Knowing you the way I do, this might give you some traction. And then you give it to them, you guide from the side and you let them take it. And then it becomes their journey. It's not like, here, let me put you in this vehicle that I made. It's so souped up. It's amazing. You're going to have the ride of your life, because sure enough, they could, but then they get out, they step out of it, and then they're still spinning their wheels because they haven't figured out how to take the traction themselves. So I don't think that I don't know that you can do that without a wider perspective, a wider view on the humanness of the person in front of you, and a whole lot of humility, and spaciousness around. It's not just having a slow, like letting them take it if you want it, leave it if you don't. Like, I have this idea for how your life might be better, but here you go, it's up to you. I mean, that is another manipulative tactic. Right. I think that's a whole, or even just saying you don't want this. Like, for certain people, I think even just saying, like, psychologists have done these studies, right? There are certain people who you can say, this is probably not for you, and then leave it and walk it away. And that's gonna make them want it. Like right. Hendrick's Gin. I remember when Hendrick's Gin came out, and they had this whole like advertising, which was like, this isn't for everyone. Most people won't like this. And you're like, what? I'm one of those people. So that's another tactic. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actually having the space to not know, and to actually care about the other person more than you care about yourself, I guess. Because I'm not talking about selling gin. I'm also talking about just like helping people out through their lives, and that's one of the things that story does. Is help people through their lives. It's a mirror that shows us ourselves and how we may act in certain situations, so that we learn how to be. So the empathy piece can't be rushed, I don't think.
Some great quotes here. Guide from the side.
I got that from my friend who's like a kindergarten teacher. She teaches at an international school in Singapore, and she was telling me about her lesson plan. She was like, guide from the side. It's like some inquiry-based learning for kindergarten kids and younger, like, and for everyone.
So this conversation is actually, I was thinking it was more going to be around the creative application of communication, right? But basically, this has been a really beautiful conversation about how to do sales human. This is really what you're nailing so well.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
let's talk about the other forms of story.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not an expert. This is my new journey in exploration and humility, which is just that I was trained in a certain way, and Joseph Campbell was the one. And so I'm assuming most of your listeners are familiar with that because of the work that you do. This is like, that's it. And there's an arc to it. There are archetypes, characters who show up, like changeling, trickster, ally, wise guide, Yoda, that whole thing. There's also the heroine's journey, which is Maureen Murdoch wrote a great book on this. Same vintage of as Women Who Run with the Wolves, kind of came out around the same time, sort of in that 90s feminism sort of swath. So it's still a good classic. And what I gained from that is an understanding that, just in essence, in the patriarchy, the heroine, who may or may not be a female, like it's not gender based, but the heroine in this, it's the language she uses, doesn't start from a place of status quo where everything's okay and then there's a great change and there's a call to adventure and then the person goes out and fights the dragon, or gets the thing and brings it back to the home and makes the place better than it was before. In the heroine's journey, the start of the journey is one of a feeling of unmatched, disintegrate. Like it's starting from within the patriarchy, so things are already out of balance. It's a wasteland to start. And the journey is one of internal depths, going into a cauldron. The transformation happens on an internal place where there's some integration that happens between the male and female aspects, or the yin and the yang. So things come more into balance as a result of the suffering. So instead of tests and trials with allies and ogres and demons and all of that, it's more of a going down to a place of darkness and finding within that the place where the unrealized feminine qualities that have been seen as, manipulative or over emotional or whatever the negative aspects of those particulates are, can become reintegrated within the heroine's journey. And then she can come out and feel. So instead of putting on the more masculine to achieve success, which is the false victory, that is the first call. And then she's like, I can do this, and becomes Lara Croft Tomb Raider, which, is a thing. It's a whole trope where it's like the strong female lead. Mm-hmm. Instead of doing that and then realizes, there's a spiritual vacancy to this work. Like it's still out of balance. I can do this, and then I'll kill myself doing this. And it's not creating balance. So going down through the journey of the suffering, finding there's some equilibrium and equalizing and reintegrating male and female aspects. So then coming out using male and female technologies to create a better self, but also a version of the world in which everyone flourishes. So not just a hero achievement, but actually coming out and making the collective better as a result of the journey. It's good. There's a lot of good in that I like. There's a lot that you can take from that, right? That makes some sense, especially now, especially thinking about the climate and thinking about, racism and everything that is happening, just even with, also with COVID, like being able to have a balance between spontaneity and structure, or reason and intellect, So those things, like finding a balance between those aspects, that's what the heroine's journey is about. But there are more. I mean, that's just those are both pretty, there's a collective journey. There's a story of where it's not about one person, actually. It's about if this world that we live on is one of interconnectivity, which, I mean, let's not pretend that it's not, then how can we create a story that's more about a collective helping to change a system or make the world a better place, using the power of our strengths come together and all of our unique strengths come together. So like an ensemble collective sort of a journey where there's not a main protagonist actually at all. And, you know, then there are other forms. There's like the spiraling nature, instead of a linear form of beginning, middle, and end. What about stories that happen in cycles, like the world we live in? What about, you know, and, you know, our life cycle, all of it, like looking at things in terms of circles and cycles rather than a line, looking at spirals, where something goes around and around, something that's smaller. There are so many different ones. I'm just getting to understand a little bit more about it. I think that a lot of the oral narrative that Campbell took his studies from were seen through, obviously, his perspective. So the perspective that you look at something obviously changes the form that you see it. There's no truth without a vision of, or a perspective on what it is. There's no full truth. It's always, so definitely worth looking at more into. This is what my current fascination is around, because given all of those options and opportunities, as a writer, the challenge then for me is finding a way to discover and honor something that's not part of our dominant paradigm's idea of what a story is. But since we're all wired to understand that as a story, also to write something that doesn't feel so avant-garde that no one will pay attention to it. Like I still want a reader to want to turn the pages. And if there's, you know, false promises that eject her out of the story because she doesn't understand it as a story, then I've failed in my duty. So that's the current paradox for me, is how do I write a story that's not the dominant paradigm story, that also is not, you know, a disintegrated, non-story, plotless story, because I love plot. I love stories. Yeah.
Well, that's with any entrepreneur, you start to feel that the way that everything's being done, there's an audience for that, there's a market for that, but there's an underserved audience that you start to consider. And then you're in your testing area where, okay, can I write a book that follows my theory? And when it does go to market, how is it received? How much pushback am I getting? And that's an indicator of you may be going in the right way. Is there an audience that goes, oh my gosh, where have you been all of my life? And that's where you are right now. You're testing that. You know, I see, you know, in the common theme in our society is like, no, we're all different and should be divided. And it sounded that there was an exploration of how that heroine's story might be a way to start explore about where are we really. We're not so different, you and me. And there is an area that actually that's kind of hidden from our eyes that we would be totally happy with if we weren't being slapped in the face all the time with, no, you're bad, you're different, you're wrong, that's
the oppositional.
Yes. So when I'm seeing where, so when I talked about Stephen Pressfield's book with you before this conversation about the art of war, the war of art.
The war of art, yeah.
Okay, so now I'm seeing why. Now I'm starting to see the backstory of you talking about the other side of the war of art.
Yeah. I mean, the nature, there is something in the title that it's about war. It's a war.
Within yourself.
It's a war within yourself. And, you know, something that I'll back up just a little bit. In Radiant Shimmering Light, when I wrote it, there are two characters. There's Lillian and Eleven, her cousin. They're two cousins. And it would appear, if you look at it and you're entering the hero's journey, that they are antagonists, that Eleven is the antagonist to Lillian. In and through writing it and understand and like really asking, my method is really asking the story what it wants to be. So not trying to impose some idea on the story, but really be open to the transformation that story can provide us as the writer of it as well. Because if I go into it thinking that I know everything, the story will be very wooden. The story, I believe the story is always smarter than you are. So you need, again, with the humility, you need to back away and understand that you don't know everything in order to learn anything from the creative process. Through writing it that way, I understood, and it was a little bit of a troubling bit for me. I was like, how's this going to work? They are not antagonists, actually. And then in and through writing it, I understood that actually it's the system they live in the system is the antagonist that's holding both of them back. And they are both doing their very best. It comes out in ways that would appear to you want to. There are certain scenes where you want to think Eleven is doing something wrong to Lillian, or Lillian needs to achieve something over 11. They're like, but they both are doing their very best and believe in their heart of hearts what they're doing is the best thing to do. Which in any good, I'll give it, any good villain should believe in what he's doing or she's doing. But in this case, it's not a clear villain. 11 is not a clear villain and antagonist. I only bring that up because I think that same polarization is what's inherent in the way Pressfield sees our relationship to our own resistance. It's a polarizing effect to say that you need to like sit down. And I really love that book. And, I use it, I utilize it. I use the word resistance. It's a phenomenon. The book is a phenomenon. And it should be. And I think it's worth asking yourself, what would it feel like if your resistance wasn't an opponent? What would it feel like if there's an aspect of connectivity that you want to reach in and through your work as a creative person, and you don't have to fight to get there? What if it was an act of compassion and love and empathy? What if there's just what would happen? How would that make that better for you? And then through my experiment in writing Radiant Shimmering Light, that was one of my hypotheses going into it. It was like, I'm going to make this fun for myself. I'm going to write this, even though it's a hard story and there are things about it that aren't fun. I'm going to come to the desk with pleasure. And this was directly related to reading The War of Art and being like, okay, but I'm not a soldier. Okay, so let's I don't want to, no one's telling me to write a book. I'm a fiction author. This is not lucrative. This is not for my notoriety in reputation. This is nobody asks me to do this. No one's paying me to do this. This is why would I do this if this is hell? Why? It's unacceptable. So I'm going to do this and love it.
Yes, but you're doing it because you're wanting someone to grow from your efforts here.
Well, Steve, I don't know. I don't know for sure. And this may be one of the hallmarks that's different from writing fiction and writing a story for business purposes that have there was no reader who I wanted to help through writing this story. I guess I wanted it to be entertaining. I wanted it to be an entertaining thing, but the first person I needed to please was myself.
True.
So it feels quite narcissistic to write fiction, honestly. but
if you didn't take that, if you didn't do that exercise that brought out of you these things that you wanted to illustrate.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
That's like the butterfly effect regardless. Right. You're going to impact someone positive or negative.
Right. When you're writing certainly a first draft, you can't actually keep that front of mind because it will freeze you.
But it's legit, right?
It's legit. Okay. It's there. So, sure. It's there.
Oh,
it's
excellent.
Happening.
Excellent.
Right.
It will freeze you. It will introduce resistance, right?
Yes,
and so,
absolutely.
Right, so what you're saying is you need to come, this is great. You need to really evaluate whether it's a sale, whether it's your class that you put on, you
Mm-hmm.
need to evaluate your motivation,
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. For me, my motivation was doing it with more love, like having more of a feeling of pleasure and love in my life, in my work, in my creative practice,
Mhm.
and not sitting there. There is this myth of the author, that, like, I don't know who started it, Hemingway or before that, of just like, you just sit there and you grind and you fight and you, like, it's not good. It's not good for the nervous system. It's not good. It's like, it's a very grinding way. I would say it's more of a hero's journey approach than the heroine's journey, which is like, use the technology, use the feminine, use the masculine, come up with something that is a balance of, or a balancing act, of working with the structures, because having a page count or a time count or having days of the week or having a death, like, necessary, great. And then having so much room for play and deep spontaneity and improvisation within those structures, and having both at the same time. I mean, that's the magic. Personally, for me, sitting down and grinding away as though I'm at war with this resistance dragon that I have to fight, and I will slay if it doesn't work. Doesn't work for me. It makes me feel like, why am I even doing, like, I could be a barista and fight with the coffee machine and have, like, I really wouldn't need to, like, this is not, I don't see what the benefit of this is. But beneath it, like, getting clear about what your motivations are beneath it, yes, it's more pleasure, but I think that even deeper than that, for me, the work of making art, being creative. I mean, storytelling is it's a skill that I learned, and it's something that, but the deeper aspect of it is finding a way to connect with something bigger than me, and bringing that, not navel gazing it. So yes, bringing it out. So it's not just working with my materials in order to please myself. There's a part of that, but the other aspect definitely is bringing it out to show someone. But it's a little bit, it's not a message. It's not like, I want to bring this to make your life better. It's just like something in how I connect to that which I don't understand. The thing, where do ideas come from? How do seeds grow? I don't know. How do butterflies make it from Mexico to Canada? Who knows? I don't know what that is. No one knows. But in connecting to that force and bringing it out into the physical realm to share, that's why I'm on the earth. Like, that's, as far as I can tell, that's what I'm here to do. So that needs to have more joy in it. It doesn't have to feel like a fight for me. I don't want it to feel like a fight, because it's hard enough living. There's enough suffering in the world. Making art doesn't have to be part of it.
So how much of this flavor is in your writing school?
This is what my writing school is all about. So, I have my MFA. I went through the academic experience of writing in academia. I took a lot of workshops in different avenues and different places with different teachers, and didn't find this elsewhere, which I think is also one of the marks of why entrepreneurs become entrepreneurs, because they looked around, they tried to find the thing, it's not there, so I guess I'll make it.
Right.
So that's what my school is about. That's the foundation of it. So it's that mix of structure, craft, technique. Like, I don't want to just, there are wonderful people out there who are working just in journaling and reflective writing and working, morning pages, Julia Cameron, all like really nutritious aspects and part of a writer's life. I love craft and technique. I love looking at dialogue and how to tinker with it. I love looking at structures. I love looking at like deep character work. Like, these are the tools that writers have. But there is a danger in how I learned a lot of that work, which is without that aspect of the great unknowing underneath it all, without that, like, the willingness. I try to teach my writers to learn all of that, practice it, show up and practice it, and then also really cultivate that part of you that doesn't know, and be okay with that uncertainty. In fact, dance with it, and learn that if you can let go of controlling so much about your story and your characters, while at the same time, which feels like a paradox, but again, as I said, where there's paradox, there's truth. So at the same time, being really skilled around the things you can control, you know, like language and dialogue and technique and character and setting and point of view and all the rest of those aspects. If you can do both at the same time, if you're practiced at both at the same time, then you can actually create something that is original, in original meaning like it originates from you, that only you could write, that will feel beautiful and true. I mean, that's where quality comes from. That's where the good writing comes from, is balancing those aspects. And I think that's a lifelong thing, you know, to balance the flow of creativity along with the structure that creativity needs.
So it feels like, you know, our brains want something familiar yet unexpected. And it feels like, to me, what you're talking about, it feels like a dojo where we're going to explore we're going to honor the universal applications of story. We need to know about them. In order to go to this deeper place, we have to experience those and have confidence to be comfortable out of control.
Yes.
And I relate with that, is like, there's a time when you're running a business and you feel like you need to control everything. But the truth is you can't. And if that's where you stop and measure your worth, then you're a failure every day, because you get slapped you turn around and there's something new there every day. And you have to be confident, not knowing the answer and not being in control. And it feels like, to me, you're wanting to design this Brazilian jiu-jitsu type writing school. What kind of people are attracted to this?
It is. You know, it is like a dojo. It is like a school. Very much like our practice exercises are wax on, wax off, while at the same time doing this other. I have the best people. You can wear whatever you want.
That totally sounds like
lots of pajamas. You just have to show up.
But it's not a defined system.
Yeah, that's right. It's not defined, but just I do say ritual is very important. So as long as you bring the same thing to your desk every day, you're training. You can train together. But the people who in our classes are just the best. They're the best people. They're unique. And if I can't say that they all come from one, like who the people are, but I do know some of the qualities are a curiosity and like an understanding. They're really talented, often very talented people who have put that talent into a box in order to make money off of it. So lawyers love language. They love story. It's like this. So a lawyer who's been working in that field for a really long time, because, you know, they were good with words. They were a writer. They wanted to be a writer, and, you know, you can't make a living as a writer, so you go into that. A lot of people working in communications. So like there are so many creatives in accounting, creatives in finance, creatives and who find their way in through communications, and they write, you know, government, places where there's like some structure that's reliable, that I feel like that industry has just like seen their creativity and been like, that's what we want. That's what we need. But, you know, there's like a few too many straps, few too many straps for there to be something that's not, there's something that's playful in there. So the other, we have a good stream of people who have gone through creative writing programs in undergrad or at, you know, or just in high school or post-secondary level or in a master's level, who then need to recover from that. They, for one reason or another, unfortunately, didn't have a good experience in an academic setting. Usually it had to do with criticism. So not everyone, some people really like, they really love being in, like they shine and flourish from being in the arena of criticism, of not even constructive criticism. It gives them more fuel. Not everybody, not everyone. there are a lot of really beautiful writers who don't do well in that environment. And it's not because if you're not a good writer, you can't take critique. It's not the case at all. It's just sometimes being when your work is still in seedling form, to have it judged, evaluated before it even knows what it is yet, can actually kill the plant. Mm-hmm. So I do have a lot of people in my school who are in recovery and are coming back to their work after thinking that they couldn't do it for whatever reason, because their experience in an MFA program or an undergrad creative writing program was not fruitful for them. So we do some healing work there around coming back to what they actually loved about it and seeing that actually they know how to do this, and it's just another environment is better soil for them to grow in.
I love that. That was one of the things when I was writing my book, is I didn't want anyone to see. I didn't want anyone to see it because, I was rowing the direction I was rowing, and I was discovering these things that I didn't expect. And so these things were coming out of me, but yet they needed time to grow before they, just the little duckling needs a little time before it's going to go out and on the lake.
Did you know, can I ask, how did you know to do that for yourself?
I was coached by the folks to do that, which I think I was going to do it anyway, but the last thing you want to do is ask a bunch of people's opinion on an unformed, well, it's like, I've done it all my life, like, I got this great idea, and you throw it out there, and then everybody just put cigarettes out on it and whatever. And you go, oh, I guess that was stupid. But what I didn't realize what I was wanting was, here's a starting of a conversation. What perspectives can you mix in there and come up with something totally different? But the safety didn't exist. And plus, you're talking about people that have experienced the unsafety side of that, and so they do need a way to come and be understood and come out of their shells, right?
And see and be seen without adjudication. Like one of the things that we do that's different, and this, this is controversial. It's a controversial thing in the school when people sign up because they want the criticism. It's so deeply ingrained in us, in writers, that you need to put, it's a whole trope. It's a whole thing that you need to put yourself on the cutting block and just be butcher. And that's how you gain your resilience and strength as a writer, is having people tell you what's not working so you can make it better. And, there is space for that, definitely. And there's a lot of it out there. You can get that if you want elsewhere. In our school, we start, for a very long time, we practice giving feedback that is like that, but it's only the positive. And it's not just, I like this is so good, this is so good. It's actually very, very specific craft-based feedback on what is working and why. And every week people need to, because you're teaching, that's how you're teaching yourself how to write, by seeing what's working. It's always easier to see in someone else's work other than your own. So it's not even in receiving positive feedback about so you learn what lands with your fellow classmates. It's the act of looking at someone's work, finding out locating in yourself what stands out, what sparkles for you, and then putting words on it, articulating the craft of how they made that. What were the mechanisms, craft-based mechanisms, that made that stand out for you? And what part of it is just like a magic thing that you don't understand? And having space for both, and then in articulating that to another person, you're wiring your brain, you're teaching yourself how to do it. That's where so much of the learning comes from.
That's cool.
So we do a lot of that.
I think that for me, if I think about when I started, Steve, you need to write a book, but I don't just want to write a book. To write a book, I want to write a book that has my unique perspective and value add to an industry. It has a lot of books about this anyway, but how do you differentiate yourself amongst your other competitors, peers? We have to demonstrate your knowledge in some way that's consumable and palatable, and right, and for a niche audience, but
Yes.
my self-identity changed from who are you, that you should even consider that, to, hey, I'm kind of good at this. And actually, that
Hmm.
the way I saw myself changed, but it came from feedback, when going, you're kind of a natural at this here, Steve. And I'm going, I am. I didn't know until I got in there doing the exercises, so to speak. And that's why I was thinking dojo when you were talking.
Yeah.
You
Well,
don't know.
yeah.
You don't know until you practice.
You can't know before you do it. And in the practice, the other thing about practice that's wonderful is that you hone your skills. So all that stuff that anybody can learn, you learn. But then over time, your confidence builds. So you put more of the unlearnable, which is your desire, your motivation, your passion, your voice, the stuff that's just you. It's the stuff that originates in your heart. And you put the skills that you learn are a way that the thing that comes from your heart can come out and be formed. And that always will stand out. It will always stand out from your peers because it's not derivative. It's by its own nature, it's not derivative. So it always will be just yours if you can have the confidence to write from that place. And I think that having a lot of practice builds the confidence.
Yeah. So someone's been listening to this great conversation. By the way, you're an awesome guest.
Oh, thank you. This has been really nice.
It. So where should they seek you out to learn more about? You have several versions of classes, kind of a do-it-yourself.
Lots. Yeah.
And then a guide by the side, and then a more one-on-one.
Yes. Yeah. I do some consultations one-on-one. I have a downloadable self-paced program that is all of the things that we just talked about that you can do on your own. And then every year we have a full semester of a really high touch, guided, lots of feedback, accountability, small classes, 4-month program that's based on that downloadable program. So that's the story course is the one you can do on your own. And the story intensive is the one that starts in September and it goes till December every year. And then there are lots of other things on there and some free resources and community aspects. There's a contest we run. There's lots of other stuff we do at the school. But the main aspect is the story course and the story intensive. That's sort of foundational.
So where are you going next?
Where am I going next? In the school.
Your school, your book, your...
Yeah. This is quite a crux that we're at right now. Just all of us at this moment, being at home, having an online school that we've been working on for the past decade has put us in a really fortunate position to continue offering what we do best to people who maybe need it, who wouldn't have thought about coming to an online writing school before. So we are thinking about how to make it more available to more people, and thinking about a membership site. We're beta testing a membership site right now and looking into that, how that would build a community over the long term, which is really what we're all about. And just as I was saying earlier, like that trust that trust that comes from showing up over and over and over with people. Writers really show up well there. It's a long game. So I think a membership site might be really nice for them. So working on how to reach our writers in a way that they can stay with us over the long game. And I'm writing a new book, and I just actually this morning began transcribing my first draft, which is all in pen and ink, and I'm just starting to transcribe it. I don't know what it is yet. I feel nervous, but I've just given myself a container.
We'll give you our opinions and critique it, and
you probably won't hear anything about it for some time, but we'll see. I did write this draft very quickly. So my hypothesis for myself this time was, you don't have to labor over it in time. So you've already figured out, like the last book, I realized it doesn't have to be an unpleasant labor. And this hypothesis, the challenge I set for myself is, you can go through that portal in a short amount of time. You have access to that portal, the portal of imagination and creativity, at any moment. So you can do this very quickly. So I did write the first draft in 3 months, and we'll see what it is. I don't know. It's still in a hypothesis form.
Well, great. Well, I've really enjoyed you, Sarah, on the ROI Online Podcast. As I said, you're a great guest, and I look forward to seeing your work. And you folks that are listening, reach out to Sarah and go through her dojo.
Yeah, find me. Did we give them my
Oh,
address?
let's give it to them.
You can find me at sarahselecky.com, which is easy, or sarahseleckywritingschool.com. They both kind of go to the same sort of places. So you can just enter at either portal and reach me there.
She'll teach you to catch a fly with chopsticks, to ride on one leg. All right.
Sorts of magic. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great conversation.
That's fun. That's a wrap.